Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of the Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My Two Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. I am G2. For the people that's unaware, or you're just brand new to this, let me tell you what the Wrestling Highlights of the Week is. It's me talking to you guys about everything that happened in the world of professional wrestling, whether it comes to the world of WWE, AEW, or TNA. Whatever happens on the screens, I will be bringing it back to you guys here and telling you all about it. If you missed WWE's Raw, Smackdown, NXT, or AEW's Dynamite, or TNA Impact Wrestling, that's basically what it is. That's what the Wrestling Highlights of the Week is. So with that being the case, let me just jumpstart this right now out the way. TNA this week on their TNA Impact weekly episodic show, they had their best of 2024, so they recapped special matches that happened this year in TNA, but they had their final resolution pay-per-view that was on their TNA Plus streaming platform, and I'm just going to read you the events that happened there and just give you the big takeaways from it. Moose defeated Kushida to retain his TNA X Division championships. The Rascals defeated Jake Something and PCO's Sami Callihan to become the number one contenders for the TNA Tag Team Championships. Ace Austin defeated Trent Seven. Jordan Grace and Rosemary, it ended up in a no contest because we got the return of Tessa Blanchard, and I'll get back to that in a minute. Joe Hendry defeated Josh Alexander, Mike Santana, and Steve Macklin in a fatal four-way match to become the number one contender for the TNA World Championship at TNA's upcoming pay-per-view that's in January the 18th, I believe, at Genesis. Masha Slamovich defeated and retained her TNA Knockouts World Championship against Tasha Steelz in a Falls Count Anywhere matchup. The Hardy Boys, they retained their TNA World Tag Team Championships against the Systems, Brian Myers, and Eddie Edwards. And Nick Nemeth, he retained his TNA World Championship by defeating AJ Francis. Now, the big takeaway from this is that Joe Hendry is going to get his number one contenders shot at Nick Nemeth at TNA's Genesis pay-per-view. This is a rematch of their Bound for Glory event match. So I expect some shenanigans probably to happen there. And also, we still do not know the details of JBL because JBL did not pop up at this event. So I'm really going to be really interested to see where this JBL thing kicks in because Joe Hendry in previous weeks, like after Bound for Glory or even before Bound for Glory even came about with his match with Nick Nemeth, he asked him about JBL. What's Nick Nemeth's whole deal with JBL? We never ever got concrete actual answers on that. So hopefully after Genesis or at the Genesis pay-per-view, we actually will get some confirmation, but that's a takeaway. We get the rematch between Nick Nemeth and Joe Hendry at TNA's Genesis for the World Championship. And I feel that the biggest takeaway out of their final resolution event was the return of Tessa Blanchard attacking Jordan Grace. Now, this had the internet split because for people that are unaware of this, Tessa Blanchard, she was in TNA, she came in about 2018, 2019. She officially left TNA in 2020, and she did it while she was a TNA World Champion. And to my recollection, I feel that she is still the only woman in North America or in America that's actually held a major wrestling company's top championship. And I exclude Sexy Star from this because Sexy Star, she won the Lucha Underground Championship. And Lucha Underground, that was completely different from the world of what we know of professional wrestling. Yes, it was wrestling, but it was more of a TV-based situation with wrestling. So again, Lucha Underground was excluded from this. I feel Tessa Blanchard is literally the only woman in history of the big major wrestling corporations that's actually been a woman to hold their top championship. And anyway, getting back from the nerd stuff. In 2020, during the pandemic, Tessa Blanchard, I feel that she was over in Mexico. And I don't know what happened between her and TNA management. Only thing I do know is that they ended up stripping her and they ended up releasing her from her TNA contract. And during that whole situation after the fact, stuff started coming out about Tessa Blanchard and her past actions towards a female wrestler, saying some slurs towards her. And the female wrestler will come out and make some tweets during that time about that, corroborating what happened, saying that Tessa Blanchard did say this and that to her face and even spit on her. And you have other female wrestlers that did work with Tessa Blanchard talking about how Tessa Blanchard is a nasty individual. So, like everything else, time heals all wounds. Tessa Blanchard and the person that she did say some slurs to, apparently they did have some photos of them talking with one another or reconnecting with one another. So I think the water is under the bridge with that. And with Tessa coming back to TNA, you had the wrestling world, at least the internet fans that watch TNA, split. Because you had people not wanting to give Tessa an opportunity after her literally grinding it out on the independents again and being in Mexico, trying to rebuild back her brand and her name again, while you got people that's willing to give her a shot, saying to come over and opening her up with open arms. For one example, Moose, who is the X Division champion in TNA, he's willing to open up and have Tessa come back to TNA, and he was happy to see Tessa back here. Again, I'm not so certain of that. I just know that TNA has Tessa there. I want to see how it goes, because I will say, you got to give the devil his due. Tessa is a good professional wrestler. If the wrestlers are willing to work with her, hey, what more can I say? Truly, what more can I say? I'm just a fan watching the television show, and if the wrestlers are willing to work with her, hey, that's all you can do. They're cool with it. They're willing to do their job. They're willing to work with that person. What more can you say as a fan? If you don't like her, you can just basically turn whenever her segment or match is on. You can just turn away from the channel and then turn back whenever she's off. Or if you're willing to give her another shot, go and watch her. I know TNA did put out a video, like an hour or something long, of Tessa Blanchard's matches on their YouTube channel. So you got that if you haven't seen who Tessa Blanchard is. Also, she is the daughter of the Wrestling Hall of Famer Tully Blanchard. So again, the name kind of should have gave it away. But that's like the biggest takeaway I feel out of coming out of Final Resolution. Tessa Blanchard is in TNA. It seems like she's back. We'll have to wait and see how long she is there. But I will be interested to see how this goes about. Yeah, with TNA out the way, I do want to move over to AEW, and they're still in their Continental Classic situation. But before I get into that, I do have to talk about AEW and Warner Brothers, their whole business dealing, as AEW is moving over to Max on January the 1st. They would put out a statement saying that, hold on, let me get it. All live AEW programming airing on WBD's networks will also be available to stream on Max and on demand after their live broadcasts. Additionally, AEW Dynamite, AEW Collision, AEW Rampage, and all AEW pay-per-view library content through the end of 2024, representing more than 700 hours of AEW action, will be made available on Max on a rolling basis. At launch, all AEW Dynamite episodes and pay-per-views from the company's inaugural 2019 year will be available, as well as more than 2 months of the most recent AEW programming that aired across WBD's networks, Warner Brothers Discovery. So, we're going to get AEW programming on Max streaming at the exact same time as they do on television. More specifically, Dynamite. So Dynamite on TV and on streaming will be airing at the exact same time. But at launch on January the 1st, because that's whenever this whole deal first actually kicks into effect with AEW and Warner Brothers, on Max more specifically, you will get all of AEW's Dynamite and their pay-per-views from 2019 already there, as well as 2 months of their most recent AEW programming. So I feel what they mentioned, the AEW programming for the 2 months, I feel you'll be getting December's and November's airings of AEW Dynamite and Collision and Rampage on the Max, as well as the 2019 stuff. I'm not certain with the pay-per-views, because they just said most recent programming. So they were kind of really broad with that programming word right there. So again, I think we're going to get the Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage for the past 2 months, which is December and November. And then from that, they're going to start rolling out AEW content going on to it. So I feel that's a great way for people that have not heard about AEW or kind of know about AEW, but just didn't really dive into it. This is your perfect opportunity, January the 1st, to get into it, know about AEW, look into AEW, what you missed in 2019. And as the year goes on in 2025, they're going to be putting out more AEW content on there. Especially for me, I am happy that they're putting it on there for people to watch the crowd get into CM Punk whenever he came into AEW in 2021. Because again, I will always say this until I die. AEW was the wrestling company that actually put CM Punk back in a professional wrestling ring in front of people. He could have went back to WWE, but if you watch the Rampage when CM Punk made his debut in AEW officially, and he talks about how he could not return back to the same place that got him sick, and he's referencing WWE at that time in 2021, AEW was the perfect spot for him to land, for him to get his feet back in the world of professional wrestling in the ring. So AEW will always get my appreciation for that. How they handled a CM Punk situation on the way out, that's where I get a little bit jaded, because I know how it feels to have people say something about you and do things uncharacteristically. I just feel a little jaded, and I feel that they could have handled it differently. But again, I always thank AEW for bringing CM Punk back into the world of professional wrestling, at least in ring wise. But anyway, getting off of all of that, let's talk about what happened on Dynamite this week. Just give a recap. They had the Continental Classic matches this week. We had Will Ospreay going against Darby Allin. You had Shelton Benjamin going against the Beast Mortos. Those were your two Continental Classic matches. Shelton Benjamin defeated Beast Mortos to get 3 more points in his ranking in the Blue League, while Darby Allin defeated Will Ospreay in one hell of a match to get 3 more points in the Gold League. So as it stands right now, in the Blue League, Kyle Fletcher is still at the top with 9 points. Okada, who is the champion, the Continental Champion, he has 7 points, while Shelton Benjamin and Mark Briscoe both hold 6 points. Daniel Garcia will hold 4 points, and Beast Mortos, he has a whopping donut. In the Gold League, we have a tie with every competitor except for Commander. Darby Allin, Claudio, Will Ospreay, Ricochet, and Brody King, they all hold 6 points. Now, this could change because Will Ospreay, I feel he has a match coming up with Brody King on Collision, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, on Dynamite. Dynamite this upcoming week, next week's Dynamite. And Shelton Benjamin, he'll be going against Okada next week on Dynamite, as well as Shelton Benjamin will be going against Daniel Garcia on Collision. So again, we got a lot of moving pieces here. In my personal expectation looking at this right now, I feel in the Blue League, we're going to have Kyle Fletcher still coming out, at least being the top guy for the Blue League, because you see AEW putting a lot of eggs in the Kyle Fletcher basket. That's one. And the second guy to follow behind is going to be Okada, because he is the champion. You can't have your champion lose and not be in the semifinals of this tournament. For the Gold League, I feel Will Ospreay, because he is, again, AEW's golden child, even though he lost to Darby Allin, who is like the Sting for AEW. Will Ospreay still the golden child. I still have a feeling he will probably be in the semifinals for the Gold League. Who's going to win in the Blue League and actually hold the leader position? That's where we get funny with this, because you still have Darby Allin that has to go against Claudio Castagnoli, and God, you have who else? You have, I believe, a winnable situation with Ricochet going against Will Ospreay, but then again, that's still shaky there too. So if it was me, I'll say Will Ospreay, and I would say, since we're going to have Kyle and Okada, those are two bad guys on that side. We need to have two good guys to offset that. You know what? I'll say Will Ospreay and Darby Allin to be the two guys to lead forward the Gold League. At least that's my predictions for that. But again, we'll find out next week because we're at the home stretch of the Continental Classic. And World's End, we'll find out who is going to be in the finals of the Continental Classic. Moving off of that, other matches that happened on AEW Dynamite this week was Mercedes Moné defending her TBS Championship against Anna Jay. That was the first match of the night to actually start the program. Mercedes Moné defeated Anna Jay. Good title matchup there. Straight, fine. No harm, no foul there. So good for Mercedes to retain her TBS Championship. Cool. It seems that we're still about to move back into Chris Statlander and Mercedes Moné going back to their business because they just had a match at Full Gear, if I'm not mistaken. Because after the match was over, you saw Chris Statlander in the backstage area looking at the TV, looking at Mercedes, holding up the TBS Championship. So it seems that we're going back to that well, in which I'm happy with. Cool. We had Hook and Shibata lose to Christian Cage and Nick Wayne because, again, the numbers advantage of Christian Cage and Nick Wayne having Mama Wayne and Kip Sabian on their side with interference. So Christian Cage and Nick Wayne beats Hook and Shibata. Again, the numbers advantage is there with Hook and Shibata having some past, not beef, they were close and they like a partnership and they were under, I would say, the mentorship of a Samoa Joe. And Samoa Joe hasn't been back on AEW television because he's been filming the Sweet Tooth. What is it? Full Metal something? Because I can't remember. Twisted Metal. There it is. He's been filming Twisted Metal as the character Sweet Tooth, reprising that again. I feel that it's time for Samoa Joe to come back, hook back up with Hook and Shibata, probably give him a little bit of tough love and slap him across the face saying, hey, what are you guys doing? You guys are killers. Why are you allowing this goof to play you like that? Especially in the instance of Hook, because I feel that Samoa Joe knows Hook's capabilities, his potential, his future. So I see that Samoa Joe probably going to be a little bit more harder on Hook whenever he comes back. So again, I feel Samoa Joe is coming back to team back up with Hook and Shibata to go after Christian and his whole family unit there. One thing before I get into the main event of the Death Riders and their whole business with Orange Cassidy, Adam Page, and Jay White, I do like what they're doing with Ricochet. Ricochet, if you haven't seen it, he's being more cocky, more arrogant, and this week he was interviewed by Tony Schiavone and talk about his standing in the Continental Classic. Again, Ricochet being arrogant, he's talking about himself, and then you get the Hurt Business. The Hurt Syndicate come out. Shelton Benjamin, MVP, Bobby. MVP standing there. Ricochet is not knowing why they're out there. And MVP hears about Ricochet. He hears Ricochet just being cocky and arrogant, all that stuff. MVP would ask Ricochet point blank, you still got my business card that I gave you? Ricochet would pull it out and say, yeah. And you see Bobby just jack up Ricochet by the face. And you see MVP grab that business card from him and just start tearing it up. And MVP will point blank tell Ricochet, nobody likes a kiss ass. And you see Bobby let go of Ricochet and let Ricochet go about his business. Now, I'm going to get back to that in a minute because later in the night, you see Ricochet backstage with Renee Paquette talking about, hey, I don't know what that was all about, but hey, they let me go. No, they didn't hurt me. So we're still boys. They probably got to figure out what they're doing over there. But hey, we're still good over there. And again, Ricochet being cocky, being arrogant. He's trying to get over this new laugh or this new cackle that he got. And all right, cool. He's trying to get that over. That's fine. You see him do the cackle. He turns around and Swerve Strickland is standing right there. And boy, do we get a big eruption from the crowd. And as they're doing the whole Who's House, and you can see it as Swerve is talking to Ricochet. Ricochet is hearing the people doing the Who's House, Swerve's House chant. And again, I mind you, they're in the back. So that's pretty loud if you are in the backstage area and that you can hear them. Anywho, Swerve talks about how Ricochet is here in AEW. He's known him for some time, and how the true Ricochet has finally came out. Talking about this guy that's not a leader, he's a follower. And Ricochet wouldn't play into that. He says, yeah, you know me long enough, and I know you long enough too. See, and I know you're going to be upset because last year you were in the Continental Classic and you couldn't get the job done. You're going to be more upset whenever I win the Continental Classic. And he goes away, hit the cackle, and just walks away. Swerve, he makes a comment to Nana saying that's why he's still bald, and let it go off like that. Now, let me tie this in for everyone right now. Ricochet, Hurt Syndicate, Swerve Strickland. Swerve Strickland has business with the Hurt Syndicate because Bobby and MVP put a beating on him weeks before his match with Bobby at Full Gear, right? And Bobby beat Swerve at Full Gear. After Full Gear was over, Swerve said that he's not done with the Hurt Syndicate. And for some reason, we haven't seen him really get back at the Hurt Syndicate after that situation, okay? But it seems that Swerve is going after people that might be getting close to the Hurt Syndicate. You know what I mean? What I mean by that is this. Max Caster, he was a guy that held on to the MVP business card, who was feeling a little bit too big for his britches with the whole Acclaim business, feeling that he's the best wrestler alive, all that type of stuff. Steps up to Swerve, says something, Swerve takes him out, gets in the ring, has a match with him, takes out Max Caster. What just happened with Ricochet? Ricochet got his little card from MVP tore up. Ricochet said that they could have beat me up, but they didn't. They let me go. Hurt Syndicate, their whole deal is we hurt people. If they really wanted to hurt Ricochet, they could have. So Ricochet does got a point there. So we'll figure out what's up with that with them in some time. And Swerve has his eyes set on Ricochet right now because of their past dealings, and more than likely Swerve didn't like what Ricochet said about Ricochet planning on doing something that Swerve didn't do last year by winning the Continental Classic. So I can sense that Swerve is going to have a match with Ricochet probably at World's End if Ricochet doesn't get the whole points that he needs for the Continental Classic, you know what I mean? And that will tie in the Hurt Syndicate, more than likely pulling Ricochet in, shaking his hand, and making him an official member of the Hurt Syndicate. Because for me, I would rather, again, see Ricochet over Max Caster in the Hurt Syndicate. Because all four of those guys actually do have a history. Ricochet, Bobby Lashley, MVP, Shelton Benjamin. Because if you remember back in the COVID era, when COVID first happened in 2020, the Hurt business was coming together. Shelton Benjamin, MVP, Bobby Lashley. They were going against two guys, Cedric Alexander and Ricochet. And they were trying to recruit Ricochet at that time to join the Hurt business. But Cedric would always be the guy saying, nah, you don't need them. What are you doing? All that stuff, right? What happened in the end? Cedric Alexander was the one that ended up joining the Hurt business in WWE. So we got a time now to course correct that. And I'm not saying that Cedric wasn't the right choice because he did a good job teaming up with Shelton Benjamin. But let's see what that would have looked like with Ricochet being in that squadron with Bobby, Shelton, and MVP now in this Hurt Syndicate. Ricochet being a heel, being cocky, being arrogant, being boisterous. Let's see what that looks like. That's what I'm hoping that AEW does go with that. But again, we'll wait and see when the time comes. Anyway, moving over into the main event, the Death Riders, which is Pac, Wheeler Yuta, and Jon Moxley going against a team of Orange Cassidy, Adam Page, and Jay White. The Death Riders will get the win because of dysfunction between the team of Cassidy, Page, and Jay White. Because in this match, you had Adam Page constantly wanting to get at Jon Moxley. And when Jon Moxley would tag in a Yuta or tag in a Pac to kind of make sure he doesn't get touched by Adam Page, Page would get pissed off and he would tag in a Orange Cassidy, because that's what happened at the beginning of the match. He wanted Mox. Mox got in, but he tagged Yuta to get in, and then Hangman went over to tag in Cassidy. As the match goes on, Mox gets in, and he's unbeknownst to him, Hangman's tagged in. Hangman gets in. He looks like he finally wants to get his hands on Mox. What happens? Jay White tags himself in. Now you get this comfortable conversation of yelling back and forth between Jay White and Adam Page. Jay White tells Adam to get out the ring, leave. Adam Page will say, all right, I'm leaving. He leaves the ring and literally goes to the back. So a good portion of this match was Cassidy and Jay White going against the Death Riders until the end. Hangman comes back out. He ends up taking on Yuta, Pac, Jon Moxley. And towards the end of the match, when Jon Moxley is the legal man, Orange Cassidy is the legal man, you get a glimpse of what World's End could look like, with Adam Page and Jay White literally just fussing with one another. In the sidelines, Orange Cassidy's trying to get those two back on the exact same page, and unbeknownst to Cassidy, Jon Moxley comes in, sweep him up, hits with a schoolboy pin, gets the 1, 2, 3, and the Death Riders win. That showed you how easy Moxley can get the win over you three numbskulls, because you guys are too focused battling with one another than to try to get the win. That's what Moxley is trying to showcase to everyone, and that's what the Death Riders' whole thing is. I get it. They want AEW to be at their best. They want everyone to be killers. Nobody lackadaisical. Nobody to be around here just try to have fun. No, AEW is the place for the best to wrestle, and Moxley wants to bring the best out of everyone. And what that just showed with him getting an easy win over Orange Cassidy because of his teammates just bickering with one another, it proved his point. And after the match was over, you see the Death Riders outside the ring as you see Cassidy, Page, and Jay White just constantly just bicker with one another. This gives them the perfect opportunity to surround the ring. So you got Claudio, Yuta, Pac, Moxley surrounding the ring. And Cassidy, Page, and White, they wouldn't notice it. And then they're like, okay. They start getting back to back with each other. And then they just start trying to wail off on each member of the Death Riders. In which they do. They hold their own. Moxley is able to get away with Marina Shafir into the crowd. Jay White is able to hit, I believe, Pac with the God. He calls this the Blade Runner. And Hangman Page hits Yuta with the Buckshot Lariat, if I'm not mistaken. And that's how Dynamite would end, with all those four men just staring at one another, because that gives you a glimpse of the main event at World's End, Fatal 4-Way matchup for the AEW World Championship. Now, I will usually end the AEW talk at that, but I do have to mention this. They did play a hype video for a returning Kenny Omega, because they did make mention that Kenny Omega will be making his in-ring debut back in Japan at Wrestle Dynasty. That's on January the 5th. He'll be going against a guy named Gabriel Kidd from New Japan, more specifically in a stable, Bullet Club's War Dogs. I can't wait to see that, because Kenny Omega has been out of the ring for a legitimate whole entire year. I can't wait to see what type of physique Kenny's going to be in, what type of wrestling mode he's going to be in, because Kenny Omega wrestling in Japan compared to him wrestling at AEW is two completely different beasts. And if you don't believe me, I'll give you two matches again that you can easily watch, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Look up Kenny Omega's last match that he had in Japan. It was against Will Ospreay at Wrestle Kingdom 2 years ago. And look at his match that he had with Will Ospreay at Forbidden Door 2 years ago as well. That's all I'm going to say to you. You'll be able to tell the difference. Kenny Omega's style in Japan is way more harder than it is over here in America, and I understand the difference of why it is, but I like his stance in wrestling in Japan a lot more. If we could get that, if not monthly, one-fourth monthly, not one-fourth, God, one-fourth of the time of the year. So basically one time he gets that Japan matchup every fourth quarter of the year, I'll be incredibly happy if we get that out of Kenny Omega in 2025. But time will tell with that. So with that being said, that is your AEW wrestling highlights of the week. And now let's move over into WWE. I'll talk about their NXT brand first. NXT, they were in Lowell, Massachusetts. And the highlights from that event goes like this. We don't know who technically is the rightful NXT champion. Right now it is Trick Williams, but we have a little bit of confusion there, because in the main event, it was Trick Williams going against Eddie Thorpe. Trick Williams hit Eddie Thorpe with a trick knee towards the end of the match. Eddie Thorpe's laid out on the mat. Trick Williams is exhausted. He lays his body back first onto Eddie Thorpe. And Trick Williams' shoulders, plural, are on the mat. The referee makes the count 1, 2, 3. And also, Eddie Thorpe's legs underneath the rope. The referee doesn't see that. So, as the referee makes the count, hit the 3, we automatically think Trick Williams wins. Another referee is out there saying, nope, Trick Williams' shoulders were on the mat. So was Eddie Thorpe's shoulders were on the mat. So now we have a confusion of, okay, what do we do with this? Ava, who is the general manager of NXT, comes out, makes the announcement to the ring announcer saying that since both men's shoulders were on the mat, by default, Trick Williams is still your NXT champion. So the referee, another referee, but the ring announcer makes the announcement, Trick Williams still the NXT champion. Eddie Thorpe is pissed. He is trying to say, yo, that's not fair, Ava. What are we doing here? And Shawn Michaels comes out because Eddie's starting to get closer to Ava. Shawn comes out there. He tells Eddie to back up away from Ava. Eddie Thorpe pushes Shawn. So now this incites Trick Williams to go over to Eddie Thorpe and look at him like, what are you doing? And he throws Eddie into the ring, hits a trick knee on him again. This will lay Eddie Thorpe out. Trick Williams will hold up the NXT championship. He's your champion, but next week you're going to find out that there's going to be some developing issues as Trick Williams is going to be facing off against Obafemi on the first NXT episode of the new year, but there's going to be some wrinkles in that. You'll find out next week on NXT's episode. We had Axiom fighting twice in one night. He had to go against Obafemi, which he lost, and then he had to defend his NXT championship against Gallus with his partner Nathan Frazier. Nathan and Axiom would retain it, but this time Nathan had to hold up the team like Axiom did at Deadline. So I like that contrast that they did there, that whole reverse situation. I do like that. I find it funny that when they lose the tag team titles, it's going to be because they're both healthy. Not because they're both broken down. No, it's going to be because they're both healthy. If you were to take the titles off of them, you would think this would have been the moment, or at least at Deadline would have been the moment when one of them was like completely done because they just wrestled a match earlier. But it's going to be real funny whenever both guys are completely healthy and then you take the titles off of them at that moment. What else happened big on NXT? Oh, Ethan Page. Ethan Page, he's been on this whole I'm down on my luck business. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have that self-confidence in me. So he comes out and says all this stuff, talking about how he's lost his smile and all that, making reference to Shawn Michaels' promo that Shawn did when he had to relinquish the WWE Championship some years ago in the exact same, I believe the exact same arena too. So that was funny how they did this years later. Javon Evans, young, bright prospect. I mean, the future of NXT going into 2025, legitimately, you can see it. Comes out to Ethan Page, talks about how he's proud of Ethan Page. He shouldn't be down on his luck. He talks about how Ethan Page came into NXT, became NXT champion. He sees the man, not this facade that we all see. No, he sees the man, the guy that won NXT title, that called his wife, talked to his daughter after that, got to have that special moment with them, the guy that put NXT on his back, and he's just trying to boost up Ethan Page's confidence, trying to do everything he can. He's saying that that's the real Ethan Page, show the real people that Ethan Page. Ethan would hear all that, and he would say, thank you, Javon, for everything that you said. And you know what, you're right. I do need to show everyone the real Ethan Page. I do. And then he just clocks Javon with the microphone, and he just starts going to work on Javon, putting the boots to him. And he just starts yelling, you guys want to see the real Ethan Page? This is the real Ethan Page. This is the real Ethan Page. He will leave the ring, go and grab a steel chair, and place it on Javon's neck, and he would stomp on it. And then you'll see Javon Evans start spitting out blood. Medical will come in, put a towel in, make sure Javon is just okay. Ethan Page did a despicable act, because you're down on your luck and you have a young guy come out there and brag you up, try to host you up, try to build your self-confidence back up. You did that to him. That was despicable and deplorable. So it's going to be that way for the next, I say, couple weeks. Ethan Page is going to get dirty looks probably from a lot of people, and we're just going to have to wait until Javon Evans come back to basically get at Ethan Page for what he did, and I'm cool with that, because again, this puts Javon Evans on another pedestal to get where he needs to be, which is going to be holding a championship in NXT in 2025. Now, whether it be the North American Championship or the NXT Championship, that's on whatever they want to do with that. But Javon Evans, he is the future. He will be holding a championship in NXT in 2025. That's all the big major stuff that happened in NXT this week. So having said that, now let's move over to the main roster product on Monday Night Raw. Pretty simple episode. First and foremost, we have new World Tag Team Champions. The War Raiders, they would defeat the Judgment Day thanks to help from Damian Priest. Finn Balor would try to get a steel chair to use, but Priest would hold on to the chair. This would send Finn into a mess. He would let go of the chair, run into the ring. Viking Raiders would destroy Finn, get the win, 1, 2, 3. War Raiders, new WWE or World Tag Team Champions, excuse me. So we got that. Seth Rollins and CM Punk, they come to blows yet again, because CM Punk was out there talking about how he's the bad guy in this story with him and Seth, talking about how Seth is a CM Punk failure because he tried to learn under CM Punk, and how there's no such thing as a bad student, there's only bad teachers, and how that is CM Punk's biggest failure, Seth Rollins. And again, he's kind of like being like passive aggressive when he throws these like shots at Seth Rollins by saying these things. Anyway, Seth will come out through the crowd, old Shield style. And again, you get the war words between Seth and Punk. And the biggest thing that comes out of this is that Punk says, yeah, you're out there with all the CM Punk fans. And Seth, he would turn it and say, yeah, I'm out here with the people. I'm never going to be ashamed to be a fan of this. And you know what's funny? This fan has main evented more WrestleManias than you have. And that triggered Punk's goat. He gets out the ring and just jumps the barricade, just starts going over to Seth. Seth is waiting for Punk, and they just start getting to it, start throwing blows with one another. They go over the barricade back around the ringside area. You get producers and referees coming out there to separate Punk and Seth. They get Punk behind the barricade, out to the back. Seth, he would run behind to get at Punk, and then you see them both again scrapping one another. They get pulled apart, and we get the match we made official for January the 6th. It'll be CM Punk going against Seth Rollins on the first episode of Raw on Netflix. Also, which is confirmed for the first episode of Raw on Netflix, we get Liv Morgan going against Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. I hope that is their last match that they have with one another, at least for now, because they need a separation point. They do. Because Liv, if she retains, let her have more credible challengers for her Women's World Championship. If Rhea wins, let her go and be a world champion. Let her just have other people. This thing between these two women, cool. I'm cool on it. We need a little cooling break. So January 6th, Netflix, I'm hoping that's their last match with one another, at least for this time being. What else happened on Monday Night Raw that was important? We still got the continuation of people being upset with the New Day, because when the New Day was trying to get into the locker room, they couldn't get in. Rey Mysterio had to come out, and Rey Mysterio had to play locker room leader and tell New Day that everybody in the back, they don't want the New Day there to dress with them. They got to find a different place to dress. And Kofi is still looking at Rey like, are you serious? Woods, he kind of like takes it on the chin and says, all right, we'll find a different place. And again, it seems like Woods is kind of like, I'm not saying like pulling Kofi by a leash or anything, but it seems like Kofi is following the trails of Woods. Because for me, Kofi has been there longer than Woods. Kofi should have been like really barking at Ray for like, yo, dog, I've been here even when you left. How can you be the locker room leader and tell me that I can't change with them? But Kofi didn't do none of that. What Wood says, all right, we'll go out and change somewhere else. Kofi just like gave a look to Ray and then he just went behind him. So I see that with this new path of the New Day of Woods and Kofi doing their business, I think Kofi is going to be tailing a little bit behind Woods because Woods leads with anger a lot more. Because again, when you look at Woods' resume or what he could be truly upset about, really, is that he doesn't have those singles accolades like a Kofi and Big E do in championship wise. Because the only thing that Woods got to his name in WWE singles wise is being the king of the ring. Other than that, he has no singles championship accolades. So again, it's going to be real interesting to see how they continue on with Woods and Kofi in this new Day situation. Again, I'm still looking for the villains to boo Kofi and Woods too, because again, that'll send it way over the top for me, and that's what I'm really waiting for. But time will tell with that. The Intercontinental Championship for the men, Braun Breaker still the champion. He retained his title against Ludwig Kaiser in a great match between both of them. No more no less needs to be said about that. You had the triple threat to see who's going to make their way continuing on in the Women's Intercontinental Championship tournament. You had Zoe Starks, you had Raquel Rodriguez, and you had Kaden Carter in this. And Zoe Starks would win that matchup, so Zoe now moves on into the Women's Intercontinental tournament. Is there anything else important to happen on Monday Night Raw? Nope. That is it, I believe. So with that, now we move over to SmackDown. On SmackDown this week, we had the fallout of what happened at Saturday night's main event over on the SmackDown side. First and foremost, got to congratulate Chelsea Green for becoming the first ever women's United States champion. She defeated Mi Chin at Saturday night's main event, so congratulations to Chelsea Green. And also at the main event of Saturday night's main event, you had Cody Rhodes versus Kevin Owens for the WWE Championship. Cody Rhodes came out with the WWE Winged Eagle Championship, the championship that Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Diesel, Undertaker, Sid Vicious, they all held. Cody Rhodes would retain WWE Championship when he would hit the crossroads on a steel chair that Kevin Owens introduced into the match. But here's the deal. After the match was over, Kevin Owens would hit Cody Rhodes with a package pile driver and take the Winged Eagle Championship and basically leave the arena, and he's held on to that WWE Championship ever since. Kevin Owens' reason for doing this is because at Saturday night's main event, he would basically have Cody Rhodes beaten, but the referee was just knocked out at the moment because Kevin Owens will hit Cody with the stunner. Referee's knocked out. Kevin goes to cover Cody, and he gets all the way up. I stopped counting at the count of 10. He had Cody down literally for the count of 10, and Kevin Owens' whole rationale is, I should be your WWE champion. I got screwed out of it because the referees weren't in place, management, Cody, all this type of stuff. So right now, Kevin Owens, he's basically walking around with the WWE Championship saying he's the world champion. So Cody isn't going to be on SmackDown for a little bit because he has to cover from the package pile driver. So there you go. Also on SmackDown, you had Johnny Gargano versus Alex Shelley. Johnny Gargano will win that matchup. You had the Bloodline. Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga out there. Solo would answer Roman Reigns' challenge for Tribal Chief combat on the January 6th episode of Monday Night Raw. He accepts. And once that's over, Drew McIntyre will come out. Drew McIntyre is in the ring with Solo in the Bloodline, and he would tell Solo point blank he doesn't know whether to attack Solo or not attack Solo at the moment, because Solo Sikoa is the guy that cost Drew McIntyre the opportunity to become WWE champion at Clash of the Castle in, I want to say, 2022. But Drew does give Solo some props because he's the only one in his family that actually stood up to Roman Reigns. So he tells Solo this: I'm not going to mess with you right now because you got to deal with Roman Reigns. Once you handle Roman Reigns, me and you, we can handle our business. And before Solo can answer to that, Jimmy Uso would take Drew McIntyre out of the ring, hit him in the back with his crutch, and continue to attack Drew McIntyre until Drew would basically escape through the crowd and Jimmy would give chase. After that, you would get the six-man tag of LA Knight, Andrade El Idolo, and Apollo Crews going against the Bloodline. The Bloodline would win thanks to help from Nakamura, when Nakamura would attack LA Knight towards the end of the matchup. So that tells you right there, this Shinsuke Nakamura, the United States champion, and LA Knight, their business is not finished yet, which I'm happy with because, again, I said it at Survivor Series when I did a review of it. I said that with Shinsuke now being the U.S. champion, it gives both Shinsuke and LA Knight something to do because we know Royal Rumble time is coming up. This is the perfect opportunity for them just to constantly feud one another until the Rumble. They do something there, and then you let them go about their business. And hopefully we should have some challengers lined up for Shinsuke when he retains the U.S. Championship. And this allows LA Knight to go on to probably some bigger things. Probably even have a prominent role in the Royal Rumble later that night. Maybe. But time will tell with that. So as I said, the Bloodline, they would win that six-man tag matchup. You had a rematch of last week's matchup between Carmelo Hayes and Braun Strowman. This time, Carmelo Hayes would get the win by ring out when Braun Strowman would beat up on Carmelo outside the ring, be distracted, not hearing the referee with her count, and then when he throws Carmelo into the ring, it's already by the count of 10. So before Braun can even get on the ring apron, the referee counts 10, and Carmelo's in the ring, and the referee has to ring for the bell, giving Carmelo the win. After the match is over, Braun chases Carmelo Hayes out of the ring, out into the crowd, into the back, and you will get a segment backstage of Braun Strowman asking various WWE members where Carmelo Hayes is, and Carmelo would attack Braun in the back with a steel chair, laying Braun Strowman out. So we're having this feud with Braun Strowman and Carmelo. This was not on my bingo card for Carmelo Hayes, to be honest with you. But I'm not mad at it because you know what? Carmelo Hayes, he needs something. He needs to be involved with something. He was literally like the top draft pick for Smackdown when they did the draft. And for me, Carmelo has had a fine 2024 on the main roster. It hasn't been great. It's just been fine. He's still got to cook up certain things. So hopefully with him beefing with a former world champion in Braun Strowman, this could bring Carmelo up in the eyes of whoever it needs to be so Carmelo could be a startup main eventer in 2025, hopefully. And also, this is a perfect feud for Braun Strowman to be in with because Carmelo Hayes, he's a professional. He knows how to work with professional wrestlers. He knows how to work with people. He is adapt to anything. So Braun coming back from a injury, working with Carmelo Hayes, this is a perfect feud for him to actually be with. So I'm not mad at this at all. In the main event of SmackDown, you have the Women's Tag Team Championships being defended. Bianca Belair and Naomi. Naomi taking over the part for Jade Cargill because Jade is still out. Will go against the WWE Women's Champion, Nia Jax and Candice LeRae. Bianca and Naomi would retain the Women's Tag Team Championships, thanks in part to Tiffany Stratton kind of not giving in to Nia Jax. Because earlier in the night, when Nia and Candice were talking with one another, talking game plans, Tiffany would walk up to them, and Candice would kind of like sun Tiffany, saying how Tiffany could be in the back, get the balloons, get the champagne ready for when Nia and Candice LeRae come back for winning their WWE Tag Team Championship matchup. And Nia, who is the friend of Tiffany, would just allow Candice to say all this. And you just see that moment of Tiffany looking to Nia for like some support, some type of backup, and Nia just wouldn't give it. She would just stand there. And once the match happens towards the end of it, you start seeing Tiffany come out. Tiffany has her Miss Money in the Bank briefcase. And there's a moment when the referee is busy with, I believe, Bianca at the time. And Nia is asking for Tiffany to give her the briefcase. And you see Tiffany just hold it right there in her hand. And Nia is constantly like shouting at Tiffany to hand it over, hand it over. Once Tiffany would hand over the briefcase to Nia Jax, the referee is there, see it, and you just see Nia like frozen in place, like, uh-oh. You see Bianca hit her with a handstand spring onto the ropes, knocking Nia off the ropes. Bianca would go after Nia outside of the ring, while Naomi would take care of Candice, hit her with a split-legged moonsault, so Bianca and Naomi could retain the Women's Tag Team Championships. So that was SmackDown. As I said, pretty quick, pretty simple. The Nia and Tiffany, that whole deal is going to cook up pretty soon. I have a feeling that it could be the Royal Rumble time, it could be Elimination Chamber, or we could just have Tiffany cash in and just announce that she wants a match with Nia Jax at WrestleMania. One of these three things is going to happen. Because I have a feeling that we're going to get a Tiffany versus Nia Jax match at Mania. I just don't know if we're going to have her cash in while Nia is already in a match with someone else, or they're going to do it, again, the noble way and have Tiffany claim and make the announcement that she wants to fight Nia at WrestleMania, because Tiffany Stratton is one of the most over females on the SmackDown roster. Anytime that it's Tiffy time, slogan would hit on her theme, the crowd pops huge, and Tiffany is just so beloved by the people. You could just look back at earlier this year at Elimination Chamber that happened in Australia. The crowd in Australia was loving Tiffany Stratton. So this has just been a whirlwind year of crowd ovation for Tiffany. I don't see it not going that way of her and Nia having a match at Mania. I just don't see it. If they happen to go another route with it, I'm going to be interested to see how they get there with it. But I think we're going to get a Tiffany Nia match at Mania. Anything else to happen on SmackDown? I don't think so. So I think I covered everything that needs to be covered. So yeah, that's it. So with that being said, this has been your Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My 2 Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. I want everyone to have a great and safe Saturday. Please be careful out there on these roads. Everybody's out there still trying to get their last holidays fix things together before Christmas and Christmas Eve, so please be careful. Do note that I will have a Sunday episode for you guys tomorrow, where I talk about things that happened in the world of news this week, and I just recap it to you. I think that's everything I do want to discuss and let you guys know about. So yeah, that's it. So again, this has been your Wrestling Highlights of the Week, presented by My 2 Cents Podcast, hosted by G2. He is I, and I am him. I love you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye now.